2/27/2020, and as I was meditating about the next video I'm going to do concerning the unseen war and the enemy, I stumbled across something that I found to be extremely amazing and interesting. So I decided to quick do this little video to share the information. And also I forgot to mention a few things in the last video. So I figured I'd go over that and share this information that I found about the current location of Eden. And if you are looking at the picture, you might have figured it out already. But anyway. So the date. Today is the 12th day of the 12th and final month of the 7th and final year of the 7th and final week of the 120th and final Jubilee, which is the 5,999th year from the start of the Jubilee count in 3,980 BC. And alright, so we get the 3,980 because we know Adam was transformed 7 years prior to the fall, and the fall occurred in the spring of 3973 BC. So 7 years prior to that is 3980. So here you have it. 12th day of the 12th month, the 7th year of the 7th week of the 120th Jubilee. We are literally the final human generation. Flesh cannot inherit the kingdom. And interestingly, last night when I was listening to the book of Enoch, Enoch mentions that all flesh will be destroyed. So not only is it the final human generation, but it's the final generation of all flesh. Because nothing survives in North, South, Central America. The first trumpet. North, South, Central America completely annihilated. All green grass burnt up means all flesh dead. Burnt. It's going to be one big charcoal. And then the second trumpet hits the Pacific, completely annihilates the Pacific and everything touching it. And then the rest is destroyed by the fallen ones and the ones that get thrown down. And then what's left, the Messiah destroys when he comes down, and New Jerusalem rains down fire. So literally it's going to be one crispy earth. It's going to be a new earth. Right? And it basically implies like a detective dissects a crime scene, puts the pieces of the puzzle together to get the truth. Okay? And that's what the Messiah is telling us to do, because he knew that things would be corrupted. So he tells us that we gotta study it and properly dissect it. However, before that, we must do John 14:21. Okay? The Messiah tells us in John 14:21 that we must obey the commandments before he reveals himself to us. Alright? And that right there is the main reason why there's so much confusion, so much weakness, so much falsehoods and error. And like the scripture says, it's the reason why his people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because when you obey the commandments, that basically opens you up to be a better receiver. And one of the main commandments that concerns that is observing the Sabbath. When we observe the Sabbath, it's like we get an extra enhancement for reception. Like a turbo boost for reception, to receive the spirit of truth. And the first thing we need to do is to obey the commandments and be faithful to the Messiah. Because without that, we lean onto our own understanding. And as you can see from all the ridiculousness out there, probably half of Christianity thinks President Trump is the antichrist, or Obama, or Prince Charles, or whatever. How confused and corrupted has that become? So, we need to obey the commandments, be faithful to the Messiah, then he reveals himself to us. Then he empowers us to receive the spirit of truth mightily. Then we can put the puzzle pieces together. Then we can connect the scriptures so that they're confirmed over and over and over, and then we can know that this is how it is. This is what the Messiah is telling us. And to view it from a perspective that humans wrote the scriptures and translated them is, I'll give you a perfect example. The seals, the first 4 seals. Okay. Let me go to that real quick. So, here we have it. I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder. A voice of thunder. One of the 4 beasts saying, "Come and see." Okay. Let me go to the interlinear. See how that says it. And I watched when the Lamb opened one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures saying, like a voice of thunder, "Come." Okay, but when you go into the Greek, it's "I come." So it's with a voice of thunder, I come. Okay? But now, when we go to the next verse. And I looked, and behold, a horse white, and the one sitting on it having a bow, and was given to him a crown, and he went forth overcoming, and that he might conquer. Overcoming and to overcome. All right, and this phrase, because it's doubled, it implies continual victory with no defeat. Okay, if he was just conquering, it would have said he went forth conquering. But because it amplifies it with a double, the phrase implies continual victory, no defeats. That's why it annoys me beyond compare how people think that this is the antichrist. Like, I mean, give me a break. I mean, the only few little battles that he wins, he's allowed to. But anyway, now, to give you a good example of how humans make mistakes, all right? Sitting. Okay. Figuratively, to remain, to reside within. Okay. Now, as you know, one Greek word can mean several different things. Same thing with English words. Same thing with Hebrew. All right? Now, for instance, you go back to 1600s when most of the scriptures were being translated into the English. You know, you have somebody in a room with a candle, a feather, and some ink with some books, and they're trying to translate Greek into English. All right, and they know that this word is horse. So, you know, put yourself in their shoes and you see that it's saying a horse, and then someone was given a bow and went out conquering it and to conquer. So what are you going to assume, or what are you going to imagine that this word means? You're going to imagine that he's riding the horse, which is, you know, what most humans would do. I'm not blaming the translators because it's extremely difficult to translate languages. But my point is that that's not what's occurring. Because a lot of people, when you're looking at the seals, you want to say that this person is riding this horse. And that's not what's happening. What's happening is within this seal, the Messiah begins his conquest to put his enemies under his feet. And then we see in Revelation 10, we see him with his enemies under his feet. And he had in his hand a little book open, and he set his right foot upon the sea, beast of the sea, it's under his foot, and his left, okay? Him literally riding a horse through the sky, or whatever you want to say. Same thing with this one. The red horse. It's not a person literally riding a horse. This is what's going to happen. This is what's going to reside. This is what's going to take place within this seal. It's not literally sitting. So, That's an example. And the same thing goes, another reason why there's so much confusion out there. And I've debated people left and right about this. And it also pertains to the antichrist. You know, if you studied Enoch, it's crystal clear who the antichrist is, and who the fallen ones are, and where they're at, and when they come out. But people want to put all their faith in a few men 1,000 years ago who had a little gathering and decided, oh, these ones are inspired, these ones aren't. Once again, faith in men. And there's people who only the King James Version is the inspired word of God. Once again, they're putting their faith in a few men with a feather and a candle, dipping their feather in ink and translating. That's what they're putting their faith into, saying that only the King James Version is proper. It's absurd. And to truly understand what the Messiah is saying, you have to come from a perspective that humans make mistakes, and that you have to dissect it, not make any assumptions, gather all the evidence, put the puzzle pieces together before you decide, and then confirm it with other scriptures before you can say, this is how it is, this is the truth. And I just want to emphasize that. The other thing is that I know there's a lot of panic out there about the coronavirus. And then all of a sudden you got the demon rats out there hyping it up. Now, one thing to take into perspective is that the fourth seal, it's only over part of the earth, not the whole earth. Okay? And the USA, like I said in prior videos, the USA is going to be the best place to live during the trial. Of course, there's going to be hard times up and down, just like life. But the best place in the world to be during the trial is going to be in the United States of America. Okay, we have the anointed ruler, for one. And for two, the Almighty is painting a Tav over America with the solar eclipses, which I believe is basically telling us we're going to get passed over. Not, you know what I mean? Like I said, yes, we're going to have some ups and downs and stuff like that, but compared to the rest of the world, we are going to be passed over. So I just wanted to encourage you with that, not to get all caught up in the hype. And then another thing is that if you watch the mainstream media or any type of mainstream news, hopefully you realize that it's completely propaganda. It's completely absent of true journalism, objectively seeking truth. Right? It's complete propaganda. It's been controlled for a long time. And I wanted to point out, which I forgot to point out in the Elijah Analysis 2 video, because they're the false prophets. Well, propaganda is deception, falsehood. But one of the main tactics that was developed in Nazi Germany, because Nazi Germany was basically the pioneers of good propaganda, good deception via media. One of their main tactics was to blame the other party, because the Nazis, the socialists, they were seizing power in Germany. And one of their main tactics for their propaganda was to blame others for what they were guilty of. So maybe you knew that, maybe you didn't. If you didn't know that, now when you hear the demon rats, the people on the left, when you hear them blaming other people for something, there's a extremely high probability that they are completely guilty of what they are saying the other is doing. And just letting you know that that's actually a Nazi tactic. Okay? And another thing I wanted to give you all a heads up is that today, I don't know if I'm going to release this video today or tomorrow, but today is the 12th day of the 12th month. Tomorrow is the 13th day of the 12th month, and that is when Esther, the book of Esther, do I have it up? No, I don't. Okay. Esther 9, we see here. Okay, so if you know about Esther, Haman, however you say his name, he plotted to kill the Jews because he hated Mordecai. Alright? And he was making gallows, actually, to hang him. And then he was having plans that the people within Persia would join him in killing the Jews. But then Esther had the Jews fast and pray, and then went to the king, and etc., etc. Long story short, there was a huge reversal. The king got the truth. He realized what was happening. He, instead of Mordecai being hung on the gallows, the king hung Haman on his own gallows. And then the day where Haman planned for the Jews to be massacred, the king allowed them to go out, confront their enemies, and the Jews ended up massacring the ones that were going to kill them. And this occurred, I don't know exactly when Haman was hung, but when the Jews killed their enemies, which was right here, 75,000 of those who hated them, it was on the 13th day and the 14th day they rested. Okay, and then Mordecai made it to be a holiday. Alright? See? Their sorrow was turned into gladness. So, the reason why I'm saying that is to keep your eyes open for the next couple days. Because it's going to be the 13th, 14th, and 15th, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Alright? So we might see something that parallels this. Now, to the topic of the video. Where is the present location of Eden? Okay. And I believe that Eden is in the core of the earth. Okay, when you research Enoch, it appears as though Eden is within the earth. Okay? Because when he's seeing Eden, he also sees the compartment for the souls, where they are stored, so to speak, until their time. So for the ones that are righteous, or the ones that die in Christ, they're stored in. The saints are stored in one spot. The ones who have already been judged are stored in another spot. The ones who have not yet been judged are stored in another spot, awaiting the white throne judgment. Okay, and it's inside the earth. Okay, and also when he's going on this trip, he mentions seeing the cornerstone of the earth. All right, and then when we see in Genesis 3, the Almighty places a desolate, flaming fire that turns. Okay, the translators assumed it was sword, but when you get the proper perspective, the Hebrew word, it can also mean desolate, and that's what it's meaning. It's meaning desolate. So the Almighty places a desolate, flaming fire that turns to guard Eden. All right. Now, when you go to, I should have had this up. Where's Wiki? All right. Oh, shoot. Okay. So, inner core superrotation is a theorized eastward rotation. And he even uses the term east in Genesis when he talks about putting the desolate flame that spins. Okay. So basically, they don't know for sure what the core is made of or what it actually is doing, but they believe that it's made of mainly iron and nickel and other elements, that it's hard, and that it can spin slower or faster than the Earth itself, because it's within like a magma. A magma surrounds it. So the core itself actually spins faster or slower than the rest of the Earth, meaning a flaming fire that turns. So the magma, that's the liquid magma that's outside of the core, is a flaming fire that rotates around it, that whirls around it. Okay? And then the Almighty says that he stationed cherubim to guard it. And it's actually the devil and his angels. So the devil was originally a warrior that guarded Eden. And we see in Ezekiel 28, the Almighty describes the devil as one who used to walk in the midst of the stones of fire. Okay? And then the devil, in Ezekiel 28, it says that he's turned into ashes, which I believe it's actually speaking of dust, which is pointing to serpent, which I'm going to be getting into big time in the next video about the enemy and the hidden war. Is Adam and Eve, the antichrist, the 200 fallen ones, and the devil and his minions. They all got stripped of their glory. And what I believe that means, and I think it's crystal clear when you research it, is that they are no longer spiritual. They are flesh. Meaning, when Adam and Eve sinned, it says that the glory was stripped from them and they were put out of the garden. They weren't allowed in. And then you see that they have flesh. They're back in the flesh again, like they were before. And that's exactly what it says in Jubilees, that they went back to the place of their birth, where they came from. All right? And then the same thing goes with the Antichrist. He gets stripped of his glory, so he's no longer spiritual. He can no longer ascend into New Jerusalem or go into the garden. And he's made into flesh. And I'll show you him in the next video. Same thing with the 200. I believe when they made that oath, they gave it to Michael. And I believe what that oath did is they basically said, we want to be flesh like the humans, so we can have wives. And they got their glory stripped. Then the same thing happens to the devil, because he started enjoying his trade, which was, he's the angel of death. So he was bringing about death, but because the Antichrist was teaching humans how to war, the devil started enjoying it, and about 1,000 years after the fallen ones were locked up, the devil got cast out of the garden, got cast out of the mountain of the Almighty, and his glory was stripped. Him and his other angels, they went with him. And I believe it's pointing to the serpent. They get turned into the same thing. And I'll get into that in the next video. But that gives you an idea, and I wanted to bring this up about Eden inside the earth, because it'll help with the next video. And also, interestingly, is that scientists believe that the core may be made of nickel and iron and other elements. And they mentioned cadmium. Now, in a video I did a couple videos ago, I said that spirit is just the ancient way of saying energy. So our spirit is a form of energy. Now, when you take that perspective and you connect it to Enoch, when he's in the midst of the earth. Matter of fact, let me just read it real quick here. Over here in Enoch. All right. Let's see, he right here. So he leaves a mountain blazing with fire. Then he says he from there went to another place and saw a mountain of fire flashing day and night. So where he's at, there's a mountain of fire, and then there's 7 mountains with it, and there's brilliant stones. Okay. And then he sees the tree of life in Eden, or the tree of knowledge. I think it's a tree of life, I'm pretty sure. Alright. And then at the end, it says that the Almighty is going to transplant the tree to his new temple on earth, which may mean that Eden is going to get yanked out of here and, kind of like pulled out of earth like you would pull a hair out of a follicle. But I just wanted to show you that he's talking about mountains burning with fire. He's seen the cornerstone of the earth, and then when he sees the compartment where the souls are, he says it's smooth and like a brilliant smooth stone. My point in saying all that is that the souls, the spirits of the dead go there, and they're in different compartments. Like I said, our spirit is energy. And, well, what are most batteries made of? Nickel and cadmium. Metal. Or I should say elements that store the energy. So it sounds to me like basically there's a big, gigantic battery in here that is holding all the energy of the spirits in separate places. So at the end, when it says Sheol or Hades gives up the death that is in them, it's literally this magnet releasing the energy up to be judged in front of the white throne, which I thought was pretty interesting. So, and then when you read, no, I don't believe everything these books say, but there's definitely some interesting things to glean from. But in this here book, one of the forgotten books of Adam and Eve, or the Cave of Treasures, it talks about Adam and Eve. There was a big gate to go to Eden. And it talks about a sea that the Almighty didn't want them to go into, because if they did, it would have cleansed them from their sins. And then you hear Enoch, when he's in the middle of the earth, he says that he crosses over a sea, which is, I believe, it's this sea right here that cleanses the sins, the water of life that the Messiah talks about, springing up. Yep. And then talks about a big gate going into that goes to Eden. And then also it talked about that when Adam was going in and out before he got completely kicked out, the angels would take him there in a chariot of fire. Okay. Right here. So he drove the man out. At the east, remember, it was saying that the rotation is eastward. He stationed the cherubim and the flaming or I should say it's the desolate flame that turns to guard the way. Okay. Let's see. Ashes is actually dust, which I believe is pointing to him becoming the serpent. Because I believe when the devil got stripped of his, no, it actually says it right here. When the devil gets stripped of his glory, the spirit, and he's put into a flesh, it says, all who know you among the peoples are appalled at you. You have become terrified. Which I believe that the Almighty made them ugly, terrifying looking. And I'll go over that in much greater detail in the next video. So, hope you found this interesting. Like I said, all my videos are just rough drafts. I encourage you to research it all much further, dig into it, and until the next time, may the will of the Almighty be done.